Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our Insider Insight Show. I'm honored to have back with me someone who's a very dear friend and someone who is incredibly courageous and has been on the forefront of outlining what's happening in higher education throughout our country. She is an incredible force, Dr. Robin McCutcheon. And a little background on Robin. She teaches economics at the Lewis College of Business at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. In addition to teaching principles of economics with using the principles of free market systems, her comparative economics course, also lovingly dubbed the Atlas Shrugged course, is well loved and attended by what she calls not just her students, but her patriots in training. Robin has been denigrated by her liberal colleagues that the information she's presenting in this course is being, quote, propaganda, end quote. She uses such propagandists as, if you will, as Ayn Rand, Ludwig von Mises, just to name a few. And the bottom line, folks, to explain in plain English, what she does is how our country's founding principles led to free markets and are the best path to liberty, freedom, and prosperity for everyone. Over 90% of her students exit her courses as avid and staunch either libertarians or fiscal conservatives. Robin has her PhD in economics from the great Wayne State University. It's my honor to welcome back Dr. Robin McCutcheon. Robin, welcome back to the Insider Insight Show.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for sharing your audience with me once again.
So, Robin, let's start with what's occurring in higher education. In particular, many people say, well, there's really nothing that can be done. There's nothing President Trump can do to enhance the free speech of professors, of students, of staff members on campus. There's nothing he can do to, if you will, break open freedom and liberty on campuses throughout our country. What's your take on that position?
Well, I think I disagree. And the reason is that in December 2019, President Trump signed an executive order. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but he signed an executive order basically warning universities and colleges that take federal money that if these colleges and universities do not support the First Amendment or any of the Bill of Rights on campus, that but especially the First Amendment, that their federal funds will dry up. And so many of these universities, those federal funds are deeply, deeply needed by the universities. So funny, within maybe 24 hours of that executive order being signed, our university got a memo from our president stating, well, we're going to support, you could almost read between the lines, we're going to support begrudgingly the First Amendment on campus. And so the entire campus is now a free speech zone.
Woohoo!
And, woohoo! And so, instead of our students having to apply for permits and such to stand in a little 2-foot square block area somewhere in the middle of campus where nobody goes, the entire campus went free speech. Well, that had an amazing result, at least at Marshall it did. And students began to kind of push back against some of the communist groups like Students for a Democratic Society. So that was exciting to see. And it rippled through my comparative economic systems class because we started up class middle of January and all of the students were talking about it. So I had to remind students that since we have the right of free speech and on campus in our school especially, the university must support and uphold academic freedom, then the gates are wide open now. Everybody can talk. If we disagree, we're going to say so, but we're going to be civil in our disagreement, right? So I think that the notion that there's nothing President Trump can do is maybe only hopeful for the communists. Now, there's another thing that I noticed. Victor Davis Hanson on July the 10th put out a list of 5 things. I have the first thing here. He said, these are things that President Trump could do right away that would help encourage more ideological diversity on campus. And the first thing he said was to remove tax exemptions from university endowments over $1 billion. For example, Harvard's got $50 billion stuffed away. Why should they get any tax exemptions? And And so I think that this is the way to hit the universities now is in the pocketbook. And this is really going to sting them because most of these universities have now not had any face-to-face campus classes since the middle of March.
Mm-hmm.
And so now there's some pushback at Harvard. Harvard has said they're going to go online in the fall and the next spring. So for the next academic year, they're online only, and the students are now whining and complaining that they're gonna pay outrageous amounts of money for an online class. And so I think that the way to get at this is right through the wallet, mm-hmm. which is something that I had said on your radio show months ago.
Very true.
Hit them where it hurts. Hit them right in the pocketbook, and they will sit up and take note. So I think the notion that there's nothing Trump can do is completely erroneous.
And it's not, as you point out, Robin, and have so, as you said, for months. It's not just President Trump doing something. It's anyone that has any kind of affiliation with any of these schools. For example, you spent time at good old Bucknell University. It's where I went to undergraduate school. You know that there was an issue this past September, actually September 10th, the day before the September 11th anniversary. The president of the university, Brovman, brought in an Antifa terrorist, paid for, funded, supported this terrorist to come on campus and, quote, lecture to the student body, right. End quote. I blew a hissy fit about that. And one of the things I did was I pulled all my funding from Bucknell and told them why.
Yeah.
If you're going to bring a terrorist on campus to put every student, faculty member, staff member in harm's way, to spew Marxist propaganda and hate, I'll have nothing to do with it. Well, I do believe there was a positive effect of that because of me blowing my mouth off as well to other alumni. You're right, going after them on the pocketbook. So, if any of our listeners have students, grandchildren in colleges or universities, tell them, you know what? The donations are coming to an end if you're going to limit free speech. Free speech is fine, but it has to be two-sided, right? And not only donations, but this tuition issue. Robin,
right.
If my kids were still in college, why would I pay, what's Harvard, $60,000 a year in tuition? Why would I pay $60,000 for an online education when they could get it at the University of Phoenix for $2,000 a year?
Exactly. That's exactly the point. And I think that maybe Harvard feels a little bit over-endowed. They can lean on their $50 billion endowment. They really don't have to listen to the whining and crying of students about how high the tuition is. But if you take a university like Marshall, mm-hmm. We don't have $50 billion. I can pretty much safely say we don't even have $500 million in our endowment. And at this point, our school is trying to figure out how do we open face-to-face, because they can't not open face-to-face. They could try to not open face-to-face, which is where we probably will end up, but we're taking a hit. Our pocketbooks are already taking a hit. And so if donors will make a little bit more effort to investigate where and how their money is spent in the university, and then let the university foundations know, I'm only going to have my $50 million spent X way, and write up an airtight contract so that money is only spent the way the donor wants it to be spent, then the university's hands are going to be tied, and they will jump that hoop. They will jump that burning hoop, I guarantee you, because nothing speaks louder and faster than somebody taking their money back out of the wallet saying, nope, I'm not going to fund you. You're just not the university I thought you were. So, I mean, money talks. Well, and you know the other half of the phrase.
And when it was released of who got the funding, many of these universities, like Harvard, had applied for the PPP funding.
Yes.
Now that got pulled back because it was outed that they had applied for it. But you're right. Money drives all these institutions.
Yes. And the bottom line for every single one of these institutions, it's not the quality of education. I mean, that's the BS they try to tell us. It's not the quality of education. It's how much money the university can funnel into their particular, boy, I hate to call them slush funds, but I will. Their particular slush funds, how many more buildings they can get built. I mean, the whole agenda for any new incoming provost and president and college dean is to expand their power base. And the only way that they can do that is through money. And
you're right. And they love general funds.
No
one should ever donate to a general fund of a university.
No.
Or to a president's fund.
No.
And you'll like this.
I totally agree.
And Robin, the powers that be at Bucknell a number of years ago, this is about 10 years ago, approached me about funding them to a significant degree. And I said, well, I'll consider this, but there are going to be some stipulations on it. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have a microcosm of my radio show on campus. And several times a year, I would like to bring in a group of speakers where I interview them, just as I do on the radio, and the students can attend. And I will pay for the speakers' fees. I will pay for the transportation. I will pay. That will be and we'll set this up as a fund or whatever, however you want to do it. And I'll pay for all of that. But I want to bring speakers on campus where I have the discretion of the content. That's the stipulation.
Let me guess. They went for that hook, line, and sinker, right? No.
Robin, I don't even think they even talked about it. I mean, the no response came so quickly. You know how long it takes to generate a response in a university. The no response came so quickly that it was just a universal no way.
Well, let me ask you, when did that take place? Because you said that was about 10 years ago. So it was
2010.
The spring of 2010 or fall of 2010?
It was the spring of 2010.
Okay, so remember what happened in the spring of 2010. The student body that was graduating, the seniors, wanted to have their commencement speaker be Dr. Ben Carson.
Oh, that's right. And he was.
Right?
Right.
No, he wasn't.
Oh.
Because the Marxist professors in the economics department threw such a huge hissy fit that the entire university was in uproar. And the only reason I know this is because I left Bucknell that spring, but I was still on their university email server, so I got all the dirt. I knew who everybody was talking about. The faculty threw such a fit that the university was forced to uninvite him. And they invited instead some other Marxist communist. I don't even remember who it was, but the students who were graduating spring of 2010 were really upset at their professors. And some of them threatened not to go to the commencement. So if you're, I can just see it. I can understand why the no came back so fast it would make your hat spin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, I won't say instantaneous, but it was almost instantaneous. And that never happened. I mean, my interactions with that never happened. And now we're getting into this entire, so these breeding grounds for much of this anarchist behavior and Marxist thought process is emanating from college campuses around, and an example of that is the president of Bucknell bringing in a known terrorist from Antifa.
Yes. Well, when you think about it, if you consider that the students who are in university today were most of them, especially my freshmen, were born after 9/11, 2001. Right?
True.
They have had K through 12 brainwashing using Common Core, which I know is widespread. It's been widespread throughout the early 2000s, widespread in the school system. They've been brainwashed to think that the United States has been founded by racists. Mm-hmm. And then by the time they get to college, they're working on a degree that unless they're getting a degree in business or medicine or maybe law is going to be useless to them. And in their core classes of their general education, they're forced to take political science and sociology. Well, these people are all Marxists too.
That's right.
99% of the professors on campus are Marxists. my colleagues at my college don't denigrate me so much anymore.
That's interesting.
They don't. They're afraid to speak with me about this. They're actually afraid of me now because I forced the university into a settlement to support my academic freedom. And professors around me have been told, don't piss her off because she will use policy to get you. So these students, it's not too surprising that, after they've been thrown out of school. Okay, not thrown out of school. All the schools were canceled from the middle of March.
Well, they were thrown out, actually.
Thrown out of school.
Yeah.
All of my international students had to go home to their home countries, so that left everybody else. They're at home. They're doing nothing. There's no job to go to, and most of them, turns out, are part of these organizations like Antifa. And so, how surprising is it that one little signal, one little event at the end of May sends them all into the streets rioting? I know, peaceful protests, but when they come around with bricks and Molotov cocktails, I think that just throws them into the ranks of rioters and instigators. So it's not too surprising. All they're doing is acting out what they've been taught for the last 15 or 16 or 20 years. A whole lifetime's worth.
Well, then I go to one of my other alma maters, Northwestern University, where I went to med school. This came out. These, quote, peaceful protests that morphed into rioting.
Right.
Professor at Northwestern. Well, that's really a proportionate, the rioting and looting, the death and destruction, that's a proportionate response. Here's what he said. Stephen Thrasher, Dr. Stephen Thrasher, is Daniel H. Renberg Chair of Social Justice in Reporting, Social Justice in Reporting at Northwestern University, where he's assistant professor of journalism and a faculty member of the Institute of Sexual and Gender Minority Health and Well-Being.
He's probably the only guy making money.
Well, here's what he said, and here's probably why. I'm sure Soros dumped a bunch of money his way, and all the other, Ford Foundation, Kellogg Foundation, all the other
Koch brothers.
This is what he said. As any military tactician or social justice organizer can tell you, direct action, rioting, looting, gets the goods in more than one way. The destruction of a police precinct, such as in Minneapolis, is not only a tactically reasonable response to the crisis of policing, is a quintessentially American response and a predictable one, end quote.
Quintessentially American?
Yes!
Wow. Quintessentially American, I wonder where we got that from. It must have been Moscow, 1917.
Right. Or Mao's China.
Or Mao's China. Or
Castro's Cuba. Castro's Cuba.
1939 Germany.
Yeah, Castro's Cuba.
Yeah, and America's a melting pot, so I guess it could be quintessentially American. What a doofus. Am I allowed to say that about, a foreign colleague of mine?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy has a degree in social justice. He's the only person making money with that kind of a degree because his students are going to go out and do what? Riot? Steal stuff? Is that how they're going to make their money?
And this from Breitbart. Professors around the country offer assistance and support to rioters. Huh.
Oh, yeah, I heard
Professors
about that.
are offering assistance and support to the rioters and looters that have destroyed small businesses in major cities across the nation. One professor, I believe it was at George Washington University in D.C., even encouraged rioters to target Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. According to a report by Campus Reform, professors at several universities and colleges are offering support and guidance to rioters that have caused millions of dollars in damage in major cities around the nation.
And I think since they're doing that, Trump should have gone out and arrested them for, what is that close association? My brain just went blank, where you arrest someone because they're an accessory to the crime.
Uh-huh.
They should be arrested.
Well, and then one of your colleagues at UCLA prof, suspended and is under police protection. This is from Jonathan Turley. Not exactly a conservative. Although he's actually been pretty supportive of very supportive of free speech and very actually supportive of President Trump. surprising. But UCLA prof suspended under police protection under police protection in addition, after refusing to exempt black students from taking final exams.
Right, I read about that. And I read his response to his students, and it was an online class.
It was an online class, right.
It was an online class. So first of all, in an online class, unless you go into the class list and you look at every single person's ID picture, you don't know what color they are. He gave them some tripe answer about how, it was something along the lines of, well, we can't really, it was something along the lines of, so in support of Black Lives Matter, but not really. And I don't remember the exact wording of it. Maybe you have it there. But when I read that, I was like, that is the wrong answer. The right answer is, my syllabus states that our exam is going to be on X date at X time. And if you don't take it, that's fine with me. I'll give you a lower grade.
They wanted a quote. You ready for this?
Sure.
Of all my years of taking tests, and I've taken thousands of them, right? I can't even imagine bringing this to a prep. They wanted a, quote, no harm final exam that could only benefit students' grades,
right.
End quote. But here's the interesting thing, as he pointed out in his note to the students, their grade was only dependent because it had gone online. And it's an accounting class.
I remember that,
right?
Yeah.
Their grade, there was only one grade for the entire semester. And that was the final.
Yeah, which is why he should have stated, in my syllabus, it states yada, 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 yada. And if you don't want to take the exam, that's fine, I'll give you an F. He didn't have to bring anything about any of the incidences or events that were going on and how people's lives were affected. He didn't have to do any of that. All he had to do was fall back on policy, which is why I keep telling people around the United States, sorry, I just had a note flashed at me. The syllabus is the contract with the student. You always fall back on your contract. And your syllabus should be following university policy, and if it isn't, shame on you. But that's why I keep telling people all through your audience, if you are a university professor, you go and memorize those university policies. They are the things that are going to save you. This professor, he gave the way wrong answer. All he had to do was say, in my syllabus, it says yada yada about the final exam, and if you don't want to take it, that's fine. I'll give you the grade you've earned. Because if to do otherwise for any one particular student or any group of students based on anything, race, color, creed, sex, gender, it doesn't matter, is arbitrary and capricious. And you cannot discriminate. You just can't. So
Robin, when did all this come off the wheels? So when I was at Bucknell, the vast majority of the economics department were what they called market socialists, which was really marketing for Marxists, right? Okay. Right. But here's what they would do with me. They knew who I was and what I was about. Free markets, capitalism. And one of the things they used to do, they thought this was, I think, kind of funny, but they do their 45-minute rant about whatever it was on the issue and then link it into market socialism and Marx and all that. And then they go, okay, capitalist Dave, where are you on this, right? And I'd have 5 minutes and they'd kind of chuckle a little bit, but they never, I don't believe they ever penalized me, Robin, for what I said or who I was. Okay? So, I know they never penalized me because I ended up with a 4.0 in economics. So they never took me down. I mean, I had to present my arguments logically and reasonably, and that's okay. That's good. You should do that. But somewhere along the line, if I went back to Bucknell now and I did the free market capitalism thing, they wouldn't give me 5 minutes at the end of the class, and I surely wouldn't be getting a B or even a C, no matter how logic or reasonable my arguments were. When did this all come off the rails?
Oh, well, I think it started coming off the rails when Marx Karl Marx wrote his book back in 1848. His book, Das Kapital, the 10 Planks of Communism, spread through Europe like wildfire. And by the mid-1880s, many university professors and even medical doctors were headed over to the continent. That was their big deal. We're going to the continent, as if it's somehow better. Anyway, they'd run over to Europe and hang out with the socialists in Germany and Prussia and France and England, and they'd pick up all these really great new ideas. None of them, of course, realized that these ideas are very, very old. And they'd bring them back to the United States, and the university professors would start teaching these ideas, and they were recognized by university professors by the 1890s as anti-American ideas. And professors, even well-known professors, started to be fired by their universities because their donors and their administrators and their board of governors were all conservative Americans, and to teach anti-American ideas was really heretical. And so the university professors by the early 1900s began to gather together, and by 1915 they had formed their own union. What is it? It is the American Association of University Professors. You've heard of it, AAUP. And it was a union designed to protect the academic freedom of those liberal professors, not conservatives, because conservatives outnumbered liberal professors practically 100 to 1. And so by forming this union, one by one, they forced the universities to accept their definition of academic freedom, which is basically freedom to speak freely within their classroom, to assign any book, any text, any material, to design their classroom, their curriculum the way that professor preferred. And universities, one by one, starting with Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, started walking down the path of, okay, fine, yeah. I mean, we can't be anti-American, and if we deny you your freedom to speak, then we'd have to deny it to everybody else. Well, these professors have a very long life. I don't know if you've noticed, but they live forever.
They do.
And then that's because of their particular occupation. Yeah. So the longer they stayed in universities, the more they hired people like themselves. Right. And so fast forward, roll past the 1950s McCarthy era, Red Scare, through the 1960s, where Marxism was converted into postmodernism, nihilism, and then fast forward through the 1990s of Bill Clinton, and here we are 105 years later. It didn't take that long, really. And
no, it really did. Yeah, true.
Really, if you live to be 88 years old, it only took them one person's lifetime to completely clog up the system, and every person that they have hired has taught Marxism or socialism, and they've passed it along. They've taught the next generation. Now our K through 12 teachers since the 1960s are doing the same crap. Common Core was introduced in the 1980s. That's just Marxism warmed over. Right. We can't do anything about that now, but what we can do is we can stand on our own academic freedom. People who are conservative, if you have tenure, you have power now. That's right. Make sure you get on a hiring committee. Make sure you get on a promotion and tenure committee. Make sure your voice is heard, because every single university's accrediting body, this is the key, if the university is violating someone's academic freedom, that accrediting body will refuse accreditation to that university or college. And that's the key.
What's interesting is that there are a number of our subscribers on this platform that are professors around the country. Many people would find that hard to believe. It's true. No, I'm not going to say who they are, but I can tell you there's one notoriously very liberal university in California, which they all are, but this one is kind of the leader of the pack, if you will. Yeah. No pun intended. And there is a strong conservative presence there that nobody will talk about.
Well, no. Why would they? these people, especially if they don't have tenure, professors with a conservative mindset, with a free market mindset, they will be thrown out, tarred and feathered, and run out of town on a rail. And so if you are an untenured professor, your best strategy is to be a chameleon. Pretend like you're all the rest until you get tenure.
And to use the own university policies, as you have shown, to use the own university policies that are already in black and white and in writing, to use that as your wedge to keep the door open.
That's your sword and your shield. As soon as you get tenure, then they cannot fire you. And that's why I hear people all the time saying, well, we've got to get rid of tenure. Well, who do you think is going to be the first one fired?
Right.
All of the conservatives. So you can't get rid of tenure. Tenure is how we keep the conservatives there. It's just that the people who are there, who have tenure, need to follow their university policy on academic freedom. And I can guarantee you every single university and college in this country has a policy of supporting academic freedom. It's just that nobody knows. It's a secret. Nobody knows that this policy is supposed to protect only the liberal professors.
And the students need to know that too.
And that's why when I get into class on the first day, especially in my Atlas Shrugged class, I tell my students, this university supports academic freedom. It means that I can design my class, this one that you're sitting in whatever way that I want. It means that I can use any text that I want to get my point across. And so when you start reading through Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged or Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom or any of the other books that I use, and you start whining and complaining and gnashing your teeth about how it's propaganda or how it's brainwashing, I'm going to turn around and look at you and say, yeah, what's your poli-sci teacher using? How much Marxism is your sociology teacher using? And I've had students say, well, my poli-sci teacher says that you're just propagandizing us, and they don't like it. And I looked at them and I said, oh, yeah? Well, I have a settlement with my university. I forced them to uphold my academic freedom. So if your poli-sci teacher wants to take me on, you tell them to bring it, because I will kick the crap out of them. And I will love doing it because they will be violating my settlement. So you tell them to bring it. And that poor little student, she went back to her poli-sci professor and she never mentioned it again. So that's what you have to do. That policy of academic freedom, that is your sword, that is your shield. You need to use it. And if conservative professors will start leaning on the university policy, and if you have to sue your university to support their own policy, then do it. Because trust me, there are lawyers out there that will be happy to take $1 million from a university to make them support their policy of academic freedom. They'd be happy to do it. And that's the way we take back our universities. First, we have executive orders from Trump to help with the money part. Mm-hmm. And then on the inside, you have the university professors, and the students want their academic freedom too. They want to be able to speak freely as well. They don't want the 9 students in SDS on Marshall's campus to tell the other 13,000 students how to behave or what to say or what they can't say. In fact, you watch and see. Things are going to get interesting. We're going to have a lot of fun with it.
So one of the things I've suggested to some parents who are very concerned about what their students are being force-fed in universities around the country, I've told them a couple things. One, if the prof doesn't have the syllabus online that you can look at, demand it, number one. Number two, demand that in this day and age of high tech, this day and age of COVID, I go, use COVID against them. Say this.
Right.
We would like every one of the classes online. The students, we encourage it. We're going to encourage our student, our son, our daughter, to attend class. But we would like it online because, we're paying all this money. We want to be able to sit in as well.
Yes.
We want an open environment so we can hear. And the reason why I suggest that is something you sent me back in March. When a number of these courses went online, professors are scared that online lectures will be shared by right-wing sites. Professors around the country are expressing concern that the recorded online lectures may be shared by students with conservative media outlets.
Yeah,
well, why would they be concerned if they were being fair and balanced, if they truly stood behind their safety? I mean, this is one of the things I suggest parents do.
Yeah, the professors don't want to be outed. That's
No.
the last thing that they want.
No.
And without the mob mentality out on Twitter and on Facebook, you can't be left enough as a professor. These people are eating their own. And that's the great thing. Because as a conservative professor, I can kind of stand there and go, shove it up someplace that's dark.
Right.
What are you going to do? What can you do? You can't call me any more names. And so liberal professors don't want to be outed as not liberal enough.
That's right.
As not left enough.
That's right.
And they don't want their stuff out online because then people can see what they're doing. I mean, I love sunlight. I love transparency, and that's the other way. That's the third leg to our stool to get the liberal professors to either put up, shut up, or leave. Because university is just a big game of Survivor. It's outwit, outplay, outlast. And for your friends on the West Coast, it really is a game of Survivor. If you can get to tenure, you are safe. And then you can start doing what you know is right to do. Untenured professors must be protected, especially if they share your mindset. And I've already let my untenured professors in my division know, if anyone is coming after you and even sniffing around violating your academic freedom, you let me know, because we will go and sue them together, and that'll be a lot of fun. And so I'm not surprised that liberal professors are panicking. Nobody wants to be outed as not liberal enough. Mm-hmm. Look at that poor lady from the New York Times, Bari Weiss, who just quit because she's no conservative. No, but she couldn't stand up to the punishment.
No, here's what she said. Bari Weiss, New York Times, editorial, right? Walked away. And she said...
She should have sued the crap out of them.
She called... Well, maybe she's not done yet. Oh. She called the New York Times a performance space for woke Olympics. Here's what she said. But the lessons that ought to have been followed after the election, lessons about the importance of understanding other Americans, the necessity of resisting tribalism, and the centrality of the free exchange of ideas to a democratic society, have not been learned. Instead, a new consensus has emerged in the press, but perhaps especially at this paper, the New York Times. That truth isn't a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to an enlightened few whose job is to inform everyone else.
Right. Well, I don't know why she was assuming. I mean, it's almost like she all of a sudden discovered that the New York Times is biased. I mean, my God. The rest of us have known this for decades, but it's almost like it was hidden from her until she actually was bullied and it was thrown in her face.
Well, I think she chose to ignore it until she became threatened.
Right.
By players. See, that's what happens, right? Everybody's there. Okay, well, they're doing whatever. But then when it's directed at them, all of a sudden,
Panic City. Oh my God, they're biased. Right. They're bullying me. Right. Cry me a river. Find your spine, stand up to them, and tell them to go to hell. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay, but it's very reasonable.
That's the thing that's going to save us, is when people finally start getting tired of all this rioting, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Marxist organization. I'm editing my words. Crap.
Yeah.
And start speaking up and saying, no, you've had your say. We've let you say it. We've let you burn down a few towns, and now we're going to spank you, just like the spoiled little bratish 2-year-olds that you are.
And President Trump, when Minnesota came for funds, he just said, hey, no way. You did not act. Right. I applauded as well.
I was applauding him.
Right. I was too.
That was great.
And people were saying how heartless of him.
That's right. Well, you know
Well,
what? It's
how
like
heartless. Who didn't have the heart when all this was happening that it could have been prevented when the governor of Minnesota and the mayor of Minneapolis said, whatever.
right. Well, the mayor of Minneapolis learned his lesson too,
Yeah, he
right?
did.
When he was in front of the crowd and the girl said to him, "Are you going to defund the police?" And all of a sudden it's like bam, right up in his face. Well, no. And then they threw him out. That's, it's almost like they're too stupid to realize things, or they're naive, or they're in denial. I don't know what's wrong with them. Maybe their brains aren't wired quite right, but they never realize that they cannot ever be left enough. And the only thing that would have saved this guy from being thrown out of that crowd would be to have said, well, yeah, of course I'm going to defund the police.
Right. And then it would have been not fast enough.
Right, exactly.
Right? They'll just keep going. There's
right.
no end point, right?
Right. Well, right. The Minneapolis allowed, especially the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota, allowed them, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, to burn down their town. Mm-hmm. And as I'm watching it burn, I'm saying, and don't come asking for money with your hand out, because just like the parent who looks at the child and says, you have broken your toys and now you want me to pay for new ones? No, grow up. So I'm glad Trump, I was, yes, that's awesome. Do it again. Tell him no, don't spoil your city. Now, if it's a natural disaster,
right, that's a different,
we can help you. That's a right. whole different thing. Right. But you let this go on. You let these spoiled brat children to spoil and ruin your city, and now you want the rest of us to pay for it? BS. Crap.
Robin, you've taught your Atlas Shrugged course for a number of years now. What's the single... What lesson in particular that is just wakes the heck out of these students who've been indoctrinated by those poli-sci professors and sociology professors you spoke about earlier? What part of your course do you think turns them all of a sudden, the light switch on, where they go, maybe what I've been learning in that poli-sci class and that sociology class, maybe that's not really quite right. And I need to really start looking at this a little bit deeper.
Gosh, that's a really tough one, Dave, because I don't think it's any one thing. For example, this last spring semester, when Trump shut down the country, or asked us to shut down the country on March the 15th, and then 2 or 3 weeks into the shutdown, I had a student who, she's intelligent, but she kept going, I see what you're saying, but I don't think it really applies to me. She emailed me in the 3rd week of the shutdown, and she said, people are getting riled up here in Columbus. They're starting to protest, and they're all shut down, and they don't have anything to do, and there's no job to go to, and I'm just wondering, Dr. McCutcheon, what is your take on this? And I started pounding out an email. It was an angry email, because the email that I was pounding out was something along the lines of, well, you were the one who was telling me that you love socialism. Well, here it is. No job, nothing to do, no money. Right. Don't you like this? Don't your friends like this? Yeah. And I always read my angry emails to my husband, so that because I have hard lessons learned. Yeah. You never send an email angry, because it comes through, right? Yeah. He said, you can't send that email. You have to just wait a day and rewrite it. So I waited a day, I rewrote it. It had the same flavor. This is the socialism you said you wanted. Don't you like it? And she emailed me back and she said, I had no idea.
See, that's it.
I know you had no idea. But see, there's no one thing in the class.
It's cumulative.
It really is, and it depends. Every class is different, right? Mm-hmm. Every student is different. This year, I had 1/3 of my class from China, 4 of them from Wuhan.
Well.
I know. And when they showed up in my class with masks on in the middle of February, I got worried. because I'd already heard your middle of January video, and I'd been following because I'd been hearing rumors in the middle of December about this really nasty virus. And I knew I was going to have students from China. Well, I had 4 from Wuhan. Okay, so anyway, the Chinese, they get taught economics the communist way, which means that they don't learn free market economics. They learn that when the government says your economy should do X, the economy should do X, and then they're ever surprised when it doesn't do X. And they can't understand when I say, if you have a top-down government-controlled economy, how is it that you never get the results that Xi Jinping says? And they were like, well, of course he gets the results. He tells us he gets the results. And I said, now be honest with yourselves. Do you really get the results? And they were like, well, no. And I said, so people don't obey like they're machines. And they were like, well, no. And I said, see, that's why your system doesn't work. That was literally the week before we shut down. Literally that week that we shut down. And they all went back to China. And I haven't heard from them since, except for their final projects that they were to turn in. But I told them when they left, I said, you can't take these books, Atlas Shrugged and Hayek's Road to Serfdom and Milton Friedman's Capitalism. You can't take these books home. You leave them here. If you want to give them to me, I'll take them. Or you sell them back to the bookstore, but don't take them home. Yeah. And the students looked at me and said, why wouldn't we take them home? And I said, do you want to spend the rest of your life in prison? Or be disappeared by your government? Because let me tell you, the stuff that you've learned in this class will get you killed in your country. And I know that, which is why I'm always scared for Chinese students to come to my class. So every single class is different. Every single student is different. There was a year, a couple of years ago, when Notre Dame was burned. Remember that?
I remember.
April the 15th. I was showing that live streaming as my Atlas Shrugged class was coming in to sit down. There was the year a couple of years ago where there were the riots, not just riots, but street fighting in Caracas, Venezuela. I was live streaming that in my class. And I said, this is where you get to with socialism. I mean, at first it starts with haranguing people and bullying them, and then it goes to tearing down statues, and pretty soon it's burning books, and the next thing you know, you're killing people. This is where it always ends. You eat the animals out of the zoo, you have no electricity, you have no water, you have no economy, and your dictator keeps telling you, oh, it's not my fault, it's those stupid Americans' fault. That's where it always ends. It always ends with killing and guillotines.
Robin, you have an online presence as well. You've put some of your coursework online, correct?
Correct.
And can people take a look at that?
Sure.
How can they access that?
They can go to my website. It's linksync.com, and let me spell it for you. It's lync-sync.com, and that takes you to the main homepage. And up at the top of the header, I have 3 links. One is in the classroom, and those are all my economic lectures. It's just economics. Then I have another link is freedom lectures, and those are my lectures for my Atlas Shrugged class, which I will be adding to this summer because, as you've already suggested, I'm going to take that class online. So all of my lectures will be there before Labor Day because I've got to get this ready. And then the third link that I have are interviews. So all of my interviews with you, all of them, I have my Insider Insights, although there's a note on that page that they'll have to subscribe to your website to get to the Insider Insights. And then I've had frequent interviews with an alternative media guy by the name of Quite Frankly, and I've got his YouTube videos there as well. And so every time I do an interview with anyone, it goes into that particular part. So let me give you the website again.
Please do.
It's linksync.com. That's lync-sync.com. And so that's one web presence. I'm kind of a ghost on ResearchGate and LinkedIn. I don't have very much information there. I choose not to put a lot of information there because I never know who's searching, but people can find me at Marshall. Some of your audience have been very kind and gracious and found me in my email at Marshall and emailed me, and it's nice to have correspondence with them. But the other thing is I'm having my 8th annual conference in March 2021. I'm having it, come hell or high water, masks, some of that hand stuff. I mean, we might have to be in bubble wrap, but by God, I'm having a conference this year.
And the date is, again, March when, 2021?
It's March the 12th, 2021. That information is also on my website. We're up and ready to go. I would love for people to come and be with us because the professors and the students that show up are of like mind. They want freedom and liberty. They adore individualism, and many of them are what we lovingly called self-starters. I mean, it would be nice to have people from your audience there who want to come and hang out. Find out what they can do too to help the process of healing and taking us back to our founding principles. That's really what the conference is all about, is how we do that in academia on an individual professor by professor basis.
Robin, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You're an incredibly courageous patriot, and our country is so much better for your efforts and your tenacity of taking on the syndicate, because very few people have taken on the syndicate as you have in the higher education world, and many people have been motivated to do so because of your efforts, and I thank you for that.
Well, you're quite welcome, and thank you once again for sharing your audience with me. I hope they find something of value, and forgive my crude language.
Your language is, you know what, not in the surgery lounge category, it was very mellow and very tempered.
Good. I'm practicing.
Your website one last time.
linksync.com, lync-sync.com.
I thank you, Robin, and I thank you folks for joining us today. Until next time, Dave Janis signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.